on today's FYI program. It is the schools week, but Wes Golden has been gracious enough to allow me to visit with Brian Kenny and Dan Boyd. They are both getting ready for retirement after years in education. Brian, first of all, let's start with you. Why education? What got you into this field?
You know, I think the big thing, Gary, is when I was in high school, I had the opportunity to coach Little League basketball, 5th and 6th grade kids, and just really enjoyed it. And then I tried a variety of different jobs in high school and college, and I actually went into broadcast communication as my major when I went out to Iowa State. But my heart kept coming back to working with kids, and I kind of felt like it was a calling, and I answered that call, and that's really what led me down this road.
Okay, so you kind of led yourself into that, but were there individuals who influenced you to get into education?
Absolutely, probably starting off with my dad. He was definitely a driver behind the importance of getting an education because he had a pretty tough life as a World War II vet and growing up on a pretty poor situation in a farm. And I think really who saved me in education, because I was a fairly at-risk kid, which helps me probably relate to a lot of our kids, was in 4th grade. I was at Roosevelt Elementary School. And Mrs. Norma Rolling was probably the greatest influence as far as turning my life in the right direction. And then we moved, and I actually went to Whittier, ironically enough. And Polly Bookta was another driving force behind guiding me, and Larry Kruger, and the list just went on and on until I transferred over to St. Mary's High School my sophomore year, and John Lingle really was, you remember that name well too,
yeah.
I'm sure, and John Lingle really was a driving force behind just really how to act with kindness and decency and treating everyone with respect and try to be empathic toward everyone's individual situation in life.
Dan, what about you? What led you to this career path?
Well, in high school we had a program called Future Teachers of America, so I participated in that and got an interest. But I also started out at the University of Iowa, and I was in pre-dentistry and thought that was going to be the answer. And then I decided that really was not the route for me, and got into biology, and biology became the avenue then for me to go into teaching, because I really just had a passion for everything about the biological sciences. And so that led me into going to Iowa State as an undergrad and graduated from there, and then got a teaching position at a small school in Northwest Iowa called Lorville. It's now Southern Calhoun, and taught 5th grade through 12th grade and a couple of classes of math. So got a good foundation in diversity of things. And fortunately, the town only had a Casey's, so there was nothing else to do except for school. And that's what a group of us did, just school stuff about all the time. Influences that really were impactful for me, one of the biggest probably was Mrs. Colshin. And ironically, I don't even know her first name, because back in those days, you didn't know teachers' first names. And the reason why she really lit a spark with me is she would do something that we would probably deem as authentic learning now, which is she would find out what our interests were. She'd really allow us to go and, as a class, expand on that. And that became the context for the learning that we did in her classroom. So it was pretty amazing as a result of that.
Let's talk a little bit about the progression of your careers. You both ended up, of course, in administration, but it certainly doesn't start there. Brian, what about you?
Well, I started my teaching career out of college in Jacksonville, Florida. I actually had a very large junior high school and coached high school football and basketball. And after 4 years in the Florida heat, came back to Iowa and taught high school. I actually moved to high school language arts. And I was actually hired at East Central, and who's now a good friend of mine. Warren Ammon was my principal, and just a great guy, great person. He and his wife Sue are awesome people, and he encouraged me to go into administration. And He actually came to see me one of our last days of school with kids, and I told him, I don't know whether to thank you or curse you for this, but really that really was my path into administration. And I was first an administrator in Appleton, Wisconsin, and came back this way, was the principal at Morrison High School for a few years, and then had the opportunity to jump over here to Clinton and served as principal for 10 years at Washington Middle School. And then when Clinton Middle School was built and Dan took over there as principal from Lyons, I joined the Whittier team. So,
you've been at high school, elementary, the middle school level. What are the differences, Brian?
Very simply, one word: hormones. So I truly enjoyed teaching at the high school level because you could have more adult conversations, but there was something always special about middle school kids. You just have to kind of let go of the eye rolls and the snorts and the grunts and the whatevers and force those conversations, because through all of their changes, they really are wonderful kids. Elementary kids, they're pleasers. They want to be loved and they want to be liked and they want to do what's best for them in their school. So each level definitely has its own blessings. But I would definitely say middle school is probably the most challenging group. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone.
No, my daughter is in education. She's an instructional coach out at Solon. She's at middle school. She'd agree with you entirely on that comment. Dan, what about your progression in a career?
Pretty similar to Brian in a lot of ways. Like I indicated earlier, I started in a small school, so I taught 5 through 12 science and math, and then came to Clinton and started teaching biology. And in those days, the newbie got the opportunity to work with the more non-interested students and those that really struggled with learning. So had a good opportunity there, and then moved into teaching honors and AP biology at the high school. Coached girls basketball for a little bit, but my real passion was in coaching girls volleyball and coaching boys track. So did those things. Then after that, started taking some grad classes and took a sabbatical in '92 and went out to the University of Iowa and got my master's in science education. Thought that I was going to be a science teacher forever, and then doing lunch duty with Jason Weiss, I decided that I was going to start taking grad classes with him. And at that time, it was Christy Gertzen-Kleppe.
Yeah.
We were a little cohort and took classes through Western, and Christy's now principal at Bettendorf High School. And then I came back and got hired at Lyons, was there, and then Brian and I worked to really break down some of the barriers that had existed in the community for a long time between Lyons and Washington. And it was a big paradigm shift for the community, actually, as CMS opened. And then, as Brian indicated, the middle school kids are challenging, but comes with that, their parents also have some different demands that elementary and high school people have. But finishing the career in elementary has been really a great thing, because the kids and the staff are always such hard workers, and they're pleasers. They want to do the very best for everybody.
Let's take a break for the weather, and then we'll be back. This is going to be a great half hour. This is going to fly. We can make this an hour. Check on the weather right now, brought to you by Kelly Heating and Air Conditioning.
Slightly more heat and humidity on track for your Thursday. We'll see generous amounts of sunshine, at least a decent breeze, and temperatures heading for the mid-80s this afternoon. For tonight, increasing clouds late. Might wake up to a shower thunderstorm by Friday morning. Overnight lows will be dropping into the mid-60s. With your Storm Track 8 weather impact forecast, I'm meteorologist Andrew Stutzky.
Sunshine, we're up to 70 degrees. Our update brought to you by Kelly Heating and Air Conditioning.
Why do customers trust Kelly? Kelly Heating and Air Conditioning goes above and beyond with a maintenance service agreement. For one low annual cost, you can save 5% on repairs, have priority scheduling, and no overtime fees. Plus, it helps avoid costly future repairs. And if you need a new Bryant whole home comfort system, Kelly Heating and Air Conditioning has many different financing options to get you up and running, whatever it takes. Kelly Heating and Air Conditioning in Clinton, your Bryant factory authorized dealer.
FYI, continuing to the bottom of the hour, we got Dan Boyd, Brian Kenny in studio there. You guys are working till the end of the month, right?
Yep.
Correct.
So, I mean, how much stuff have you accumulated over that time that you've got to pack away and put in boxes? Brian?
Well, interestingly enough, my wife Carrie and I sold our house and back in the winter months, and we learned to purge as much as we could. So recently, as in 2 days ago, I removed 3 boxes of my stuff out of my office after an awful lot of giveaways and throwaways, things that really mean a lot to me. But as an educator, you are a natural collector, because what you use this year might not work for next year's group of kids, but in 2 years, there's a group of kids who really need that resource or that support. So I think we're squirrels by nature. We just collect everything and keep it until we need it. So there's been an awful lot of that.
What about you, Dan? I would imagine pictures on the wall, different things like that.
Well, I'll take the 3 boxes and exponentially growth them to a basement full right now. And Sharon is really embracing having a lot of boxes in the basement. I started going through some last night and picking out things for my niece, who's an art teacher in Fort Dodge. And so that part's kind of fun, but it's also fun, like Brian said, being able to gift things to other educators and people. Just, whether or not they really want it or not, they say, oh yeah, I'll take that, and they'll stick it somewhere and use it later. So
Both of you have been around the block a couple of times, so you've been in education for some time. Let's talk a little bit about some changes you've seen over the 30-plus years. Certainly, we got to start with technology. That certainly has changed, hasn't it? I mean, you're in sciences. Talk about that.
yeah, it changed a lot, even within the context of when I taught biology. We had, like, one of the big things was microscopes and using triple beam balances. People don't even really know the triple beam balances now because they use electronic balances when they measure, which are way more accurate. But just with all of the different things that within the context of tapping into technology to be a sensor, to collect the data that you needed, and then interpreting that was really an amazing thing. But starting as classroom teachers, we had chalkboards, and nobody has a chalkboard in their classroom, and most of them probably don't even know what they are except sidewalk chalk. And that evolved into whiteboards, and we've had different types of interactive screens in our rooms. We've had Promethean and all these different things. The new thing is ITVs, which can do about anything. They can play videos, they internet with the curriculum that we have. They're interactive, so kids can write on them, and then teachers can save different things and utilize them again. Just amazing stuff with regard to that. I also remember teaching typing, and typing is translated over to computers now, but a lot of kids are really lack good typing skills, but they're great at the computer and technology. So, really a lot of progressions there.
I don't know how they text with their thumbs. I can't do that. Brian, education for you individually with all these changes. I mean, is every summer as you continued in your career based on further education?
It absolutely is. I think one thing we have to remember is that the one thing every one of us as American citizens have is we have some form of an education. So we all have an opinion on what that education should look like for the next generation of kids. But what we have to remember is what a child who's graduating, I think our 5th grade is the class of 2032, that's way different than what I needed as the class of 1981. And so we get kind of romanticized in, we should bring back cursive, or we need to do this, that, or the other thing. What we need to do is make sure our kids are ready so they can compete, whether we like it or not. They're not just competing with other Clintonians, but Iowans in the Midwest and in the entire world. So every summer, every school year, we're always evolving with changes to what we can do to make sure that we're supplying our kids with the best possible education, which, by the way, Clinton does an excellent job of, and sometimes we take that for granted in Clinton. But if you have family members or friends who are outside of Clinton, this is not a put down on anybody. We all do our own thing, but we are on the cutting edge of so many things. It's pretty incredible what we do here.
Kind of leads into the next thing it changes. I want to talk about teaching philosophy. What was it like, Dan, when you got started? I mean, what did they tell you to expect when you stepped into a classroom?
Well, the expectation was you walk in, the kids are going to basically be 100% compliant with everything that you say and do whatever you ask them to do. And they were in the sit and get mode where the teachers dispensed information and the kids were expected to just absorb it all. And today's classrooms, we've really moved across the board with the concept of thinking classrooms, where we get kids in and they're trying to solve problems that help them with problem solving and conflict resolution, because they're working with a partner that they may not work with all the time. And a lot of the life skills are being embedded in. As the high school looks at that portrait of a graduate and moves to getting kids prepared for just living in society, those teaching strategies now being incorporated in the classroom are much more appropriate to fill out those needs. And I think the other thing is that the kids are expected to really do a lot more facilitation of learning after the guide of the teacher, and then the teacher monitors and helps to prompt and get the students on the right track. But it's not the sit and get thing anymore, and kids are asked to share their opinions and vocalize more.
Brian, why don't we let you address the philosophy changes as an administrator? I know when I was in school way back in the late 50s, early 60s, you didn't want to go to the principal's office. So how's that changed?
It has changed in my short time as an administrator. Truly, even here in Clinton, going from Washington to Whittier, I think now, alluding to what Dan was talking about, it's about connections and finding out what makes each child tick and how you can connect with them so that they feel wanted and they want to be at school. Because the three of us growing up, we played outside. There wasn't much on TV, so we didn't have a lot of options. So when we went to school, it was really just to learn. Now we need to make sure we're making connections with kids. So as principals, we were way more out and about, playing football at recess or walking around classrooms more and more, and that's a big point with Wes, which we agree with, and really just connecting with kids on every turn possible. Sometimes it's a simple high five and a hello, or a hug from a little one who just needs that little extra TLC. Sometimes it's deeper conversations, but really that's been the philosophical shift. And I truly believe that 95% of our kids have not changed from the core of who they are. I think things have gotten more intense with needs. Part of it's because we're more aware, but because of life circumstances as well. So we just have to stay attuned to those high needs.
Well, this half hour is flying by. I want to talk a little bit about athletics with both of you, because I have always felt that if somebody is involved in athletics, they're going to be a better student. You, of course, as you pointed out, volleyball was your love, and talk about that.
Yeah, volleyball was an amazing opportunity for me, working with Coach Massey for most of my career in volleyball. I coached over 20 years with him, and just being able to network. We had young ladies that were always the National Honor Society kids. They were on homecoming court. Many times we had the queen of homecoming playing in the finals of a volleyball tournament and missing the homecoming dance, those types of things. But they were dedicated young ladies to what they did, and the mindset of the athletes in the times when both Brian and I coached were they came and they worked hard, and they knew that it was an expectation that they were there, and that translated directly into the classroom. So all the kids that were part of that athleticism actually were some of the biggest and the best scholars in the classes as well. But volleyball was great, just being able to be part of teams that went to the state tournament and involved with that. We had a second place year in boys track when I was coaching with a number of great kids. So those types of opportunities were really amazing. But just being able to get to know the kids more on that personalized level, and then having them in class was really another benefit as well.
You know what I always like too about sports is that you're better athletes. You should participate in every one of the sports. Don't specialize. Brian, you've worked with a lot of sports as well. What do you think of specialization on that level?
Don't care for specialization at all. Some of the best athletes I ever coached, David Johnson being one of them, was a 4-sport athlete, and if someone would have tried to take any of that away from him, I think it would have broken his heart. And there are those along the way who get encouraged. I think that's more about parents than it is about kids, because kids know exactly where they stand on their athletic team. They know who's stronger than them, who's not as strong. Parents don't always know, because sometimes we want to live vicariously, and so we impose our opinions on the kids, and that's when problems start to develop. But you realize after you've been doing this for a while, a coach is nothing more than a teacher, and a good teacher makes a good coach. And really, it's about life lessons, because truly, how many kids come out of any community as a D1 athlete or a professional athlete? It's more about what you talked about, Gary, just those life skills you can take with you down the line.
And speaking of life skills, you guys are getting ready to move on to another chapter of your life. How difficult has it been this year, knowing when you are going to be retiring, to say goodbye to everybody? Dan?
I think the last day of school was pretty powerful. It's always a sad point for a lot of our kids, because school is something that they count on. They know that they'll have a meal every day. They know they're going to come and be loved and get hugs and be appreciated for what they do. And a lot of our kids, unfortunately, in our community don't have that opportunity as much in the summer. So the last day was kind of tough, knowing that was going to be the big send-off for a lot of the kids, and many of them you won't see until a few years later if you run into them, and then it's like, who are you again? Because, the crazy thing with elementary school is, by the time they get to middle school and high school, they look so different.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't really change much. And that has been really one of the biggest little challenges, I guess, that come with the elementary world, because they change and they know you like you was yesterday. But really the transition has been happening over a long period of time. And everybody has just been so supportive and really been there for both of us, I believe.
Brian, what about your goodbyes?
Yeah, I would have to say that Dan is spot on with that. Throughout the year, once I made the decision that it was time to ride off into the sunset, I tried to put that in the back of my mind and just focus hard on doing my job, because that can get in the way of finishing what you started. But once you start to transition in that last week of school and you start to say your goodbyes, and then staff leaves a couple days later, and some tearful goodbyes there. It's definitely an emotional challenge, but it's also a reward for all the hard work you've done, because those sad faces and the tears and the hugs, that sort of re-energizes, I was here for a purpose, and we did the best we could, and now it's time for somebody else to take over.
We got just about a minute left in the program. I knew this was going to fly by. Plans for you in retirement?
So I'm continuing on the Clinton Baseball Club Board of Directors for the Lumber Kings. Hopefully we'll keep that going well. Eventually we are going to relocate to Wisconsin, where all of our grandchildren will be, and Carrie's excited about that as well. And I guess the last little nugget is I've accepted a job with the Green Bay Packers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Assistant coach? Working with the secondary?
I'll be on the sideline on the coach. They'll throw me off as soon as I realize I'm down there. No, just a little part-time job where I'll be tour guide for the stadium. So
Wow.
I'm excited about that.
Of course, you were up there for when they had the draft.
Yes, I was.
Oh,
It was awesome.
Yeah,
so.
Carrie was in. She talked about that.
She
That was
was.
crazy.
Yeah, we had a great time.
Dan, what about you? What are your plans?
Still be connected with the community. Sharon has the opportunity to continue to working at the Alverno, and I'm continue to be a board member of the Impact Coalition in Clinton, so work a little bit more closely with that, and may look at supervising student teachers a little bit and see if that opportunity
Oh,
would
great.
come to fruition or not. So.
Hey, it has been a pleasure to visit with both of you, and thank you for what you've done for the Clinton school system, and enjoy your next chapter of life. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary.
Yep. Thank you.